Again, our guest in the studio tonight is Renee. Lindsey, again, Renee, thank you so much for coming up here tonight. Is it raining out there when you're coming in?
It was drizzling, yeah.
Cold and drizzly. Boy, it sure feels like fall.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's fall and we need to get there. It's been such a warm summer. We were talking about all kinds of different things. First of all, Renee has a site. It's called Renlin, RENLIN consulting.com. You go out there and take a look at it. It talks about the different work she does. Maybe you could kind of just highlight some of the things that you do, maybe up at the 20,000 foot level for people. Somebody that would call you, people that are looking for help. Maybe they're looking for answers, as we talked during the break. Maybe people that are confused about certain things. What things do you offer? Again, taking your background, and that's, as we were also talking during the news, try to kind of set the stage for our listeners, the type of things that Renee has been through, which brings her to the point where she's at. I mean, how do I put it? It kind of qualifies you. These things qualify you. You see more than, there's more than going to school, reading a book, and heading out the door. I mean, that's cool if you're a carpenter or a painter or whatever, but in this line of work, the mind, feelings, perception, all that stuff, this is a very touchy it's a touchy area. It really is. And I think without a doubt, you've got the foundation is there for you to build upon. So you help people. What do you do? Tell us some of the things that you do.
I think a way to answer that is to explain what kinds of clients I have.
Okay.
So my general kind of client can be separated very generally into two different camps. I have those that are very heavily steeped in metaphysical thought and have their mental framework is around energy, crystals, things like this, and that is how they understand what's happening with them. And so I can pull out tarot cards and we can talk about past lives and karma and energy and things like that, and it's I'm already speaking their language, and so I can help them. The whole point is to help them come to their own conclusion. So I will guide somebody through a process of revealing some information that I see. I'm hesitant to say this is your answer because that is not something that they can internalize. It can be told by me. If they don't agree, though, which I encourage my clients to disagree with me so we can have a discussion about a difference in perception. And some of my clients have been very surprised, like, wait a minute, you think that you could be wrong? And I think wrong is probably the wrong word for it, but yeah, I could say my perception is different. Let's see why. Let's see what you think about this. And so I can use some tarot cards or some astrology, and we'll talk in those terms. Okay, Neptune, etc. Mm-hmm. Another kind of client that I have is kind of your business professional or entrepreneur that doesn't think so much in metaphysical terms, but is very self-driven and wants to get in touch with intuition, wants to get in touch with trusting this instinct. And so imagine these two ends of a spectrum. The one who is the client that exists mostly with this metaphysical perspective, I help bring them down to the practical. Okay, this is great that we can talk about our souls and how we're ascending and how the planet is changing. How does this apply to your mundane life? How can you give meaning to your everyday existence? It's nice that we think about our souls. Now, what about your job? Well, let's talk about that. What about your house? And things that are very pragmatic and not really necessarily metaphysical at all. And then on the other end, the business professionals, or many atheists come to me also, which I think is really fascinating since I'm talking about energy all the time. Then send feelers out to how they can think about their instincts and how they can trust their instincts and what that means. Both of these things, the qualities that these clients all have in common is that they're self-driven. They want their own answers. I have had some clients that come to me and they say, tell me about this person, tell me who I am. I am hesitant to give an answer. And when I'm hesitant to give an answer, then that is, in their perception, me disqualifying myself. Oh, you don't know. Okay, you're not legitimate. I'm going to go home. So that is not my style of practice. I think if you hear something from me and it's only from me and you don't resonate with it at all, then it leaves when you leave. I mean, it stays in my office, it stays in me. So you go home and maybe you don't really feel like you've gotten any, clearer on your life at all. So I help facilitate people through thinking about their own lives through a metaphysical perspective. Okay, maybe you have karma with this person. I'm noticing these patterns of communication with this person, or a lot of relationship stuff. I do a lot of relationship stuff. And what can we do about it? What can you do about it? Bring it back to the client. There have been times when I had one client who said, I'm interested in this guy. So first of all, I have 3 questions. 1, does he like me? 2, will he date me? 3, if he dates me, will he be faithful? And none of these questions have anything to do with her. And so my job then is to be able to bring back the line of questioning to what would drive somebody to ask those kinds of questions to begin with. And let's start there. Because, like it or not, my perception is life is uncertain. Let me help you manage that. I can give you some perspective, but in the end, does it change anything except your perspective? Does it change the way the other person behaves? Does it change the way things that you can't control? How can we become more flexible in the things that we're uncertain about?
Interesting. So you help people. One of your things is you help people, and I would assume it's got to be a feel good for the individual. Is let them come to their own conclusions. You've assisted them to get to that conclusion. Maybe they knew it all along.
Lots of times that's the
But
case.
you're the person that lays it all out for them, draws it out, and helps them connect all the
Many
dots.
times I have people's instincts validated through my words. Oh, I knew that. I just needed you to say it. I needed somebody else to say it. It's very comforting to feel like we're seen and heard by other people. We can't explain how we feel. We can go to a medium and they can say, this is what I'm getting. And, the client will say, yeah, that's what I thought. And so it seems, in that case, it's just a matter of having a green light. And they switch on the light,
Right.
But there are some times when, I say, this is what I'm getting. And a client will say, well, I don't, okay. And, and they sit and think about it for a while. And if they come to the conclusion that they don't want to listen, that is more of a conclusion than when they started out.
That's true.
And there is some clarity there, too. It doesn't happen very often anymore, but it did in the beginning, where I was... when I was first starting out professional a few years ago, I was new, and kind of wet behind the ears, and it was important for me to feel like I was accurate. Now, it's more like, does this make sense, and how can we think about it? And the clients that I bring to my business, reflective of that shift in my goals,
Interesting. Very interesting. Do you do sessions throughout the week?
Right, so I have weekend availability, and I am doing some things through like FaceTime or some remote things. I prefer a client come into my office, we record the reading, they go home with the recording, they can listen to it, because I think that helps personally. I have some clients that prefer to take notes instead, but the point is you have something with you as you go home. You can review the session, and a photograph of a tarot spread if I'm laying cards, a photograph of an astrology chart if I'm talking about astrology, or simply a recording of our discussions. I have 2 courses that I offer that are 6-week courses, and in general we don't talk about astrology or tarot in those. We're simply talking about managing intuition or understanding boundaries. And I in that, it's very much like life coaching, or similar to life coaching. Sometimes it will come up. I had one client, and she was having difficulty with one of her child, and I said, well, let's talk about some karmic history with you and your child. But, beyond that, there wasn't as much mention. So, religious or non-religious, whatever
Right.
your belief systems are, I don't feel like there's an exclusion of that. But I have been to mediums who have told me who I am, and I find that very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Mostly I think the method of execution is what has made me uncomfortable. Oh, I'm getting a thought about you. That must mean I must tell you. And if I have not given my permission I invited a medium over to my house. I invited to give him a reading, and he started reading on me. As soon as he walked into the door, I could feel, I guess sort of like tentacles out, sort of reaching at me. I have to explain it in imagery because I think it happened on a quantum level or something like that. But the point is, I didn't actually give verbal permission, and I'm really big on consent. You know, I'm consenting for this session to happen, and that I consent by saying, okay, let's do this. But I didn't ask him to read on me. He just started talking because whatever he was getting in, which I don't question the legitimacy, that was his automatic go-ahead. And so I have a disagreement with that. I feel like I don't operate that way.
That kind of goes back to that respect thing, respect for another individual.
And ethics. My mentor in California, she said one of the experiences that really came to my mind was, well, my husband and I were driving a friend of his home, and it came to me that he was dying. So do you say that to somebody? Even if you might be wrong, even if you're right, it's going to have an impact on the person's life. Maybe they know, maybe they don't, but that is a serious issue. And so should it be said? That was what she asked herself first. What do I say? What do I do? What do I say? Am I supposed to say anything? And so then I would say as a medium, it comes to consulting with whatever higher up is there, and, or, you know, higher up, to use that term, whatever influence we draw on by being sensitive to these things, even if it might be that we're sensitive to the other person and there is no higher up, but we can tune into their disposition. And that requires then that we don't transpose, well, I would want this. I would want this way, you know, and not project our own agenda. And sometimes, you know, saying things to somebody or the manner in which I have said them has been contrary to what I would want and totally helpful to what they would want. And in the beginning, it was the flip also. Oh, I'd want to be read this way, and it wasn't helpful at all.
Do you ever sometimes get that sense you're reading what they want you to read? Does that take time to get past that? I mean, can there be, like I mentioned about people that are hard to read, or there's some people that throw barriers up, or there's some people that can throw confusion up?
This is how I would explain that. I tend to be more sensitive to what people deny. Imagine somebody's energy and their baseline emotional state, say everything's running well and they're pretty aware of who they are, like a garden hose we have turned on and we're going to take a drink, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like this water fountain kind of, you know, this little fountain. Okay, everything is full speed ahead, we're all fine. But then the minute that we suppress, it's like putting our hand on top of that water, and it's got to go somewhere. Right. So it starts squirting out with force. And that is what I tend to be sensitive to, is what people suppress and deny because it's louder. It's louder in energy than it is in speaking. And so then the difficulty becomes hearing somebody say something and watching their body language and getting this resistance. So somebody who is a skeptic I think it goes deeper than that. A skeptic could be, well, you haven't proven it to me yet, or a skeptic could be, I don't want you near me. But there tends to be some kind of resistance, and then I need to ask myself, what should I do in this situation to respect this person the most? Sometimes there's a lot that's suppressed and I'm getting loud signals and don't, you know, have to ask myself how to respond in this particular situation. And mostly that's why I like speaking, because if we can articulate how we're feeling, that actually brings that energy into our conscious mind and we can vocalize it and that sort of thing.
Very good. Interesting. Sounds like you help a lot of people out. Sounds like a lot of people need to call you and get some help.
Well, yeah, I'd like to think so. I think one attribute that people who know me, whether they're professionally or not, tend to tell about me is that I'm honest. Mm-hmm. And so honesty is not always easy. Many times it's very difficult because being honest with ourselves usually means we can honest with a growth agenda. So, you know, in order to be able to mature and grow means that we face something that is not very comfortable. And while I have practiced enough being uncomfortable with my own beliefs and my evolving self, I respect the fact that it's very difficult. And not everybody is interested in living that way, and I think that that's fine. So those that come to me and call to me that want to be able to come to their own answers and want to be able to figure things out and don't want to be told who they are and what to do, those, yeah, give me a call. I'll help you out. I think that that's great.
And people that are living a lie, because I think there's a lot of people that are out there, I shouldn't say living a lie, but that are in denial on certain things.
I wouldn't say they need to call me. I mean, you might say they need to call me, but I don't know how much help I would be.
Well, your military background can straighten them out. Like I was
Yeah,
chuckling about the
right.
kids before and saying, I'm proud of my kid. Like, well, let me revert to this. I'll tell you a story. About
I'll tell you, if I approach that situation with force, I'll get force in return.
Yeah.
You know, the openness and what you get into a session with me is really what you take out of it.
Right.
So,
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit, if we can. When you came into the studio, we talked a little bit about end of the world type stuff. Probably a bad term to use, but the preparedness thing. There was a couple of, again, I'm going to be cautious how I tread here. In the LDS Church, there's some authors out there that have some very strong beliefs on cataclysmic things happening. There's been a lot of talk out there. Actually, the church just put out a written statement earlier in the week about everybody should be prepared, and I think that goes above and beyond the church. I mean, I think everybody should have a little bit of food and water and some stuff put away. So, you know, if we live here on a critical fault line, if something like that happens and we have a major earthquake. But above and beyond all that, there's been some doomsdayers out there, and in the preparedness world, people have been buying and buying and buying, and the end is near and stuff like that. And maybe we could talk on that just a little bit, because it seems to be a little bit of a craze right now. I mean, yeah, I think financially this country is in trouble. Maybe worse, maybe not as bad. I don't know. I'm not a financial analyst, but just my common sense says that we've got a lot of debt out there. We've got other superpowers like Russia now, of course, you know, with Syria taking some very aggressive tactics, more so than I think our military did, going in to help. Putin's like, no, we're not here to help. We're here to drop bombs. That's been happening. So, I mean, I think some people even, I was reading an article today about, is World War III, are we on the brink of World War III? I don't know. Maybe we are. What's your take on, above and beyond that, what's your take on end of the world, the sun's going to crash into the earth, da-da-da-da-da? What's your thoughts? Because everybody's in that mode. Not everybody, but a lot of people are.
well, I do actually want to address the World War III real quick. And I think World War III became something we couldn't define when we stopped defining war. Conflict. It's the Vietnam conflict. It's the, you know, it's the war on terror. That's like pointing at the government. So I don't actually know that we could really define World War III as something that will have a beginning and an end, because we define war differently than we used to. I just want to speak on that. But that it follows with the same what's going on, what's happening. I think and this is my personal opinion, the definitions of our reality are changing. We can't define money in the same way. We have an abstract concept of money once the, you know, solid value. Now here we have the precious metals, but then we have the paper that's an abstraction of something of value, or we have our, you know, binary in our computer, and our credit cards is an abstraction of what is valuable. And I think that is intrinsically unsustainable. I don't think you have to be a medium to figure that out, to see that the trade is not equal. It won't be able to be sustained because we don't have value for value. We have the concept, and then we have something physical, like, you know, going into debt for a house, and the debt is an abstraction and the house is real. That exchange is not balanced. Lots of metaphysicals and mediums will talk about the planet coming into balance. And I think what is happening here, on a social and economic level, and on a political level also, is that the structures that kept this unbalanced way of understanding the world, and these are structures that can be embodied by people, but not necessarily people creating the structures, then are starting to disintegrate. And so instead of, you know, we have an economy that's unpredictable. How do we get our needs met? We've got to start thinking outside the box and creatively, and lots of times that is trade or value for value. That is a way that balance comes together. At the same time, on a macrocosmic level, my personal experience of questioning who I am outside of the military, requiring me to go all the way down into systems of control, is reflected in what is this planet? Who are we as humans? And the systems of control then get confronted through questioning and things like that. And people are not as comfortable with their religious beliefs, or, beliefs in general are starting to disintegrate or get tested or scrutinized, and what's working and what isn't. And when I think about an epiphanic moment, the lightning strikes, right? And we suddenly have this insight, and nothing is ever the same. It's kind of the same, I think, as the end of the world. The end of the world as it has been for now. Now, do I believe in a geothermic, okay, we're having climate disasters? Yeah, I think so. But sometimes I think it's a sort of chicken and egg question, so is the sun going to crash into the earth? Are we going to get hit by an asteroid? What's going on here, and all of these natural disasters, I think, are symptom is maybe the wrong word, a reflection of a larger, again, metaphysically speaking, a larger process of planetary evolution, which then give us a choice as humans and embodied souls to see if we can transcend an extremely permeating dichotomy of have and not have, and maybe a small portion of humanity has and a larger portion doesn't, and how to then balance the planet. And I think that the physical shifting and the political shifting reflect that, because there isn't any other choice in the end, I think, but to think outside of that box. How are we going to solve this problem? Natural disasters tend to bring out polarities in culture, and you have groups of people that rise to the occasion and do things differently, and then you have groups of people that exploit difficulties there. But
Sure.
That's what I think of the end of the world, is a shift in the way that we view things, the way we talk about things, and that is reflected then in our monetary system and our political systems, but all at the base of it, a perspectival shift on what it means to be human, and what it means to what Earth is to us, and how we would view the planet as living or not. I mean, all of these questions come up, I think, and the shift then comes in answering them in a way that has not happened before. Thus the death of the planet as we know it, and then the rebirth, as in many a cosmological story, a creation story, the rebirth of the planet as something new and transcendent. The celestialization of the planet, or however you'd like to frame that.
Do you think we have major changes coming?
I think we're in major changes already, but I think...
You think they're going to escalate, though?
I think so. I think the escalation, in my opinion, is a call to become more flexible with the change. Very fast changes. Think of Moore's law and how much information can be stored on smaller and smaller pieces of electronics, and then all of a sudden our advancing electronics past the law, the exponential growth, the unpredictability of pretty much everything, I think, makes the change very unsettling. I would say part of this is because an emotional process of moving through change, I think, stays the same. So it almost feels like we're moving through molasses, as we change and we grow. But that's in relation to an advanced technological, call it whatever you want. Do we control it? Does it control us? I mean, that's a whole other question. But there is not so much a reflection of being able to move at a stately pace, but becoming more flexible with that, I think, is... that's a more important question. I don't think changes are going to stop anytime soon. I think it's going to escalate. I think it's going to become more uncertain, and then we get to flow. We get to get back to the flow. And I would point out, though, I think one of the ways that we can get back to a sense of steadiness, which I think so many of us want, is in the steadiness of the seasons, in the steadiness of nature, in the growth cycle, in the necessary, forests lighting on fire every few years of their own accord in order to make room for new growth. That's where I think the steadiness, one way the steadiness can come. We can look towards the cycles that don't change so much. You know, humanity's changing very fast with technology, but then you still have your seasons.
Right. And maybe something, some event, whatever that event may be, maybe it just needs to happen. I've often said that. I think now, without getting into politics or anything like that or economics, but there used to be that big middle class, and now we're finding again there's the haves and the have-nots. Except there's a lot more have-nots. There's a lot of people that lost a lot of things in the depression, recession, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of people. It seems like there's just the very wealthy. I don't want to say the very poor, but things have changed. I mean, economically, they've changed radically. But then I think people are also adjusting. They don't necessarily need the big house with 5 bathrooms in it. They don't need to drive the fancy car. And I think that when you kind of look outside of maybe, I don't want to say one's mundane life, but so many people don't open their eyes. They get up in the morning, the alarm goes off, they go to work at some company in a cube, they're doing things, they're part of the machine, they're a little cog, they come home, all they're worried about is making sure that they can make the next Visa card payment, they can make the car payment, they can do something for the kids, and it starts all over. And I think more and more people that have been forced out of that situation are now starting to open their eyes a little bit and see that, hey, there is more to life. There is more to going to work. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work hard or you shouldn't be passionate about things, but so many people are just they're caught in that they're caught in that little cube farm every day, and they don't realize life. And I think that as things change, it comes knocking at their door, especially when people are laid off or let go, or again major. You don't hear of people getting raises anymore. It's like either take a 30% cut and keep your job, or you can walk. But again, maybe those physical things need to be there so people open their eyes and adjust, and we don't get so materialistic. I don't think people are as materialistic as they used to be. Yeah, there's some that are. But in general, I'm noticing a trending of people not being as materialistic. And maybe that's a step in the right decision, in the right direction to begin with.
I would say certainly what we consider valuable is evolving.
Right.
So with, say, for example, a physical crisis, like we lose a job, we lose a house, our root survival is then threatened. Well, humans are tenacious, we know that. So then we get creative. Mm-hmm. What do I value? And that is a painful and difficult process to go through, especially if one feels as though their value system, if they change it, has gone against the grain. And here I think that different communities are beginning to rise and form that reflect the same values and values that are unsustainable, again, like I said, that are not working anymore and doing damage to the planet, and power dynamics are imbalanced. Then they begin to, it's like a last gasp, that's kind of how I feel about it. I don't feel like it's going to stay. So the transition point of, I have a personal crisis in my life. I don't have my house or my job anymore. How am I going to explain that my life is worth living? The value changes. Okay, that's great, but I feel totally isolated. I think I'd better find somebody who reflects my value system so I can begin to build my community. This process I help clients with often, with the changing value system, which is difficult and painful, and I think we don't respect the difficulty and the pain of that enough. I think we feel like we have to be fine. Hey, it's cool. No, my identity has just gone up in smoke, and I don't even know how to explain that to myself because I haven't had, maybe I haven't had somebody say, guess what, your entire value system has been threatened. You get to redecide who you are. That, I think, the fundamental change in our values can be prompted by a physical change and can be prompted by, in my case, a social change from military to civilian.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I think the change, whether it's good or bad, negative or positive, and I think again more and more people, and I would assume you agree, it's more we're seeing more negative things happen as far as people falling out of the norm, but the positive things is they're reinventing themselves. they're sitting back and saying, again, I don't need the big house. How many bedrooms do I sleep in? I got a 5-bedroom house. I can sleep in 1 bedroom. Family is more important. Spending time with family and friend is more important. Spending time getting to know myself. You know, I mean, I think our lives, so much of our, and you know, you with the military, of course, that was a big piece of your thing. I think a lot of people, they're kind of trapped, if you will, in that, you know, it's all about me, and the money I've got in the bank and stuff like that. And it's difficult, especially if it really radically changes. It is difficult for people. I went through it. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. But then after a while, you reinvent yourself and you say, I don't need it, and now I'm going to make the best of what I got. You know, it's like driving a fancy car, because I sure don't. You know, so many people get so tied up on the physical things. What kind of car do you drive? Well, so what? Some guy goes by you at 80 miles an hour, and you're going at 80 miles an hour, and he sees it for 1/8 of a second. Well, does that justify having a payment book that thick? I don't know. You know, everybody's a little bit different. That's just my spiel on it. But again, that realization of what is important, money, physical things versus family and happiness and stuff like that.
I think the key word there is versus. I think that's where the shift happens. Because say you lose your job or your house, it doesn't go away that you need your needs met somehow.
Right.
And so this is the change in perspective of what I believe money is. And I think there's a huge shift here on our perspective with money. Well, does it make you a bad person to want the nice car? If it means that somebody else doesn't get something, maybe so.
Right.
But what if it's possible to feel like you really, really do need luxury and somebody else can have their needs provided for, and it doesn't have to be the dichotomy.
Right.
It can, you know, but these are questions that I think we need to take some time to get to the bottom to, and the bottom of, and we don't have a socially reinforced patience for that kind of inquiry. No, stick it on Facebook and Instagram and whatever. And I have, you know, the attention span to read, you know, 10 sentences and then I'm toast. And you know, something about how I feel about money. Does it make you a bad person for wanting it or needing it? I don't think so.
No, not at all.
It's more like, well, how does everyone, like, this is the balance again.
Guest tonight is Renee, Lindsey. Before we go on, though, again, for the rest of the month coming up, come on, cursor. Next week, I always forget to talk about who's going to be here next week, so I got to get the next week part done. Keith Pfeiffer will be here. Keith is a member of MUFON. I believe he's an assistant state director. He's got a website called World of UFO Photos, I believe. Very interesting. Has a lot of cases tied to the MUFON cases and pictures and stuff. He'll be here for 2 hours. Then our good friend Stephen Spignassi, who's authored over 40-some books on every subject from ufology to the Titanic to the presidents to all kinds of fun stuff. I've had Stephen on several times. He's so much fun. He'll be back with us for a couple hours next week, so looking forward to that. Okay, a deep night tonight, but this is a good thing. Our guest tonight is Renee, Lindsey. I am so impressed, and I just everything you do, you've got it together.
I do have a lot of things together.
No, in this realm, I mean, you do.
Oh, yeah, well, I was just thinking
Well,
about in life in general.
okay.
There are some things I don't have together, but I practice what I preach, and I'm learning to flow with my own sense of uncertainty. It's uncomfortable. I'm just going to say that. It's not very comfortable.
But that's what makes us all human.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we go fringy tonight for the last 15 minutes?
Yeah,
All
please do.
Since this show, of course, was based upon the paranormal and ufology and stuff like that, and you had a military background, military life, we get so many people that call in. We have a lot of ufologists that come on the program. And, of course, the biggest thing is the big cover-ups. If you could, just from what you've seen, doesn't mean that you want to talk about UFOs or not, but do you believe that our military is hiding a lot of huge, huge secrets? A lot of things that...
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I think systems of control must hide secrets. This is tied to a philosophical idea that knowledge is power, and that whoever knows more has more power. I don't have to be a medium, I think, to speak on that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do think that uncovering secrets is a tricky business. If, for example, we're not quite sure what we're looking for, or we're not quite sure of how deep the rabbit hole goes, or if it has any end at all, and getting to the bottom of something, I think at a certain point, the bottom is, what do I believe? That's based on my own experiences researching conspiracy theory to myself, which I have done before, and personally came to that conclusion. Yes, I think the military feels a moral obligation to hide from the population that it is in. I do believe that the military believes in what they are doing. And I think also you will find individuals that have conscious awareness of the impact of secrets on a population, and you'll have individuals that are deeply invested in the goodness of what they're doing. So it gets complicated. But as far as secrets themselves, yes, sure, absolutely.
Because that's the question that's, so many people ask that, is there ever going to be a day of disclosure? I don't think so. I think there is. It just depends how you define it. I don't ever think the president's going to step out and say, yeah, we've got ETs in the basement of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or they're here, or they're there, or, there's something at Dugway. I mean, of course, that's what kind of makes this program enjoyable and throws the curiosity and the mystery into the mix. But people have seen a lot of things. In my life, I have seen 2 what I will call UFOs. And as I've stated many times, if they are of this world, we've got some amazing technology. If they're not of this world, they're pretty cool.
Well, I will go a step further. First of all, I'll say I do believe in aliens.
Okay.
But I also believe in alien souls that get into human bodies. Now, as far as an agenda is concerned that is malevolent, that's up for questioning. I don't believe malevolent alien souls get into human bodies. I do believe in a misalignment of an alien soul in a human body that can lead to really wacky behavior that can be very destructive. But when people ask me about aliens and posit that maybe we have, maybe they're around, I want to say you have no idea how many alien souls are on this planet. In my perspective is to aid in a transition by offering an alien perspective that is removed from Earth. However, I don't want to invalidate anybody's difficult experience or horrible experience with alien abduction. I know that there's plenty of research out about that. So that I'm still undecided on a personal level. However, I would say personally, the mixture of alien and human, well, you could trace it back to Neanderthal or things like that.
Sure.
Or simply take it from my perspective, which is people who have human bodies and souls that did not begin on Earth, if that makes any sense, that actually had physical form or interdimensional form on other planets that have then come to this planet with, like I said, an agenda to help. That doesn't always work out that way.
Do you think, if, we're just saying suppose here, but do you think that if there were extraterrestrials on the planet and the government could benefit from it, they would?
I think they would try. And we have some cases, and I don't have a ton of research on ufology, where, say, nuclear weapons have been shut down and things like that. So I think that there is intervention to the betterment of humanity. I think also there would be intervention by systems of control, such as the government, to try and harness technology, etc. But those, I think, are, going along with the rest of the program, unsustainable. I think it's a grasp for control that does not see a much larger picture that a highly evolved being could see. And so, maybe it's allowed to go on, but ultimately, with a longer or more evolved view, it's not really gonna, it's not gonna fly. But that is, as far as alien intervention, I don't have as much research as I'd like to really be able to answer that question to satisfaction.
Because now, one thing that I've heard of course, I've talked to a lot of people that claim to have been abductees. I've done a lot of my own personal research on that, and I'm careful how I tread there, because there is sleep paralysis, which can very much seem like an alien abduction or an abduction scenario. But then there are people, I believe, that have had things happen. And then what's even scarier is people that have had things happen, they feel from a not of this world presence, then go through, I guess, what they call a me lab, where the military gets a hold of these people and they want to find out what happened. And there's been a lot of those that have been documented. So obviously there's some sort of connection. I mean, if you feel that, you know, Joey the alien abducted you and took you somewhere, and the next day you end up in the back of a van with a black cape over you and you're getting the hell beat out of you, so you start talking. That's where I guess that's where maybe the fringy part of it comes. But could be something going on there. Could be.
Oh, I think it's a valid perspective. I think for somebody who wants to dismiss it, that's also a valid perspective. It's not so easy to say yes, no. I do think, though, that if we honestly believe what we feel about something is real, then that, I think, needs to be taken seriously. Whether, you know, here, this is the great question of philosophy. What's true? What is truth? You know, it's one of those things that's just sticky and sort of seems to slide from your fingers when you try and grasp it. But for somebody's own peace of mind, if they tell themselves that they're crazy and they feel crazy telling themselves that they're crazy, or they have a feeling that what happened was true and they can't explain it and somehow feel calmer saying, I just know, that I think is more interesting. Is it true is a good question. Is it useful is another question I think is more interesting. What is useful for my peace of mind? Mm-hmm. Does it change the way I treat people? You know, how do these opposing perspectives say, for example, generally accepted thought, no, aliens don't exist, or generally accepted thought, yes, they do, and how? What is useful in my mind?
Yeah. Interesting. There's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of weird, well, I guess weird isn't really the right term, but there's a lot of different things out there, a lot of stuff going on. I think people are becoming more conscious in different ways. You know, now you do have other governments stepping forward saying, yeah,
finally,
right, our government won't, but the Canadian government will, the Russian government will. So there's something out there. There's something unique. I don't think that those beings need to come here to save the planet, though. But like you talked about, and those are just cold hard facts about nuclear, nuclear potential, nuclear launches getting shut down. I don't know. Maybe they are trying to help. Maybe they're trying to keep us in check a little bit. Because I think as a human species, I think we are a little bit radical.
And that's taken from the perspective that the Earth needs saving and there's not some intergalactic war, which I've heard plenty about also. Mm-hmm. I'm undecided on that. Some
of it sounds like television, Hollywood fantasy, you know. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that when we talk about some of these subjects, it's Hollywood sensationalism that, you know, that comes into play all the time. We think about aliens attacking and what have you. And again, as you mentioned about intergalactic wars, yeah, I've had a few guests on that claim that they feel they know that. Andrew Basiago, who was going to run for president this year but decided not to. He's a businessman up in Washington. I've had Andrew on the show a couple of times. Andrew talks about the Mars jump room, that him and many other high-ranking people have popped into this elevator thing, and 2 seconds later you're on the other side of Mars that's fully inhabited with water and forests and all kinds of stuff, and yeah, it's a lot to get around. I don't know if I believe all that, but it's interesting, and who's to say that there isn't something very unique like that out there? Who's to say that those things don't happen? I don't know.
I like to keep it open as possible, though.
And again, it comes to the respect thing. One thing that I've built this program on over all the years is I do not use the Howard Stern tactic of getting somebody in here and ripping them to shreds. Yeah, maybe that builds better radio, but I think that it's about respect, and it's about learning from other people and letting people come on and be open-minded and saying what they want to say. You know, some things I agree with, some things I don't agree with. But, you know, again, it's respect. I think everybody needs the respect to talk about what they believe in and share their beliefs, because in all these subjects, who's to say what's right or wrong?
One of my favorite alien moments is in the Muppet movie when Gonzo is playing or singing about, you know, I've never been there, but I know the way. I like to ask the question, why are you interested? What drives you? That, I think, is a very interesting question, more interesting than finding the facts. Maybe to somebody who'd like to find the facts, it's more interesting. But I like to think that the drive to discover that particular thing is kind of indicative of itself, of something to discover in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we looking?
Yeah. I think a lot of it just presents itself, though, and I think as humans, most of us are curious. It's the curiosity. I think we want to know. I really do. But, you know, like when they talk about, like when I asked you the question about government and government suppression and cover-up, the one thing I've always said, and you know, of course, probably one of the most famous alien things is the Roswell incident. Do I believe something happened there? Yeah, I do. I don't know what. I've heard different theories. Some people say it's aliens from outer space. Some say it's aliens that crashed into each other. Some people say it's a weather balloon. Some people say it was a German type of craft. It's hard to say. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to see these cover up because for so long you had government agencies saying, no, it was a weather balloon, it was this, that. I tend to doubt they're ever going to come out and discredit 40, 50, 60, 70 years of secrets and say, oh, well, by the way, we lied. Because then the average guy is going to say, well, if you lied about that, then what else did you lie about? I don't think we'll ever ever see some of these things. I don't know. I might be wrong.
I like to think about the world acknowledgement of extraterrestrial life is the same kind of acknowledgement that happened during the Copernican turn, which is the sun is the center and the earth revolves around it versus the earth is the center and everything revolves around it. That was such a huge shift that, you know, the history of philosophy itself took a major turn of what does it mean if we are no longer the center of the universe? Mm-hmm. Same. I think it's the same sort of thing. And I think it comes out in as much as we can handle it and reflected in these changes that were happening in the planet also. A re-identification of the world at large, which is what we were talking about before.
And I think we have to be accepting to change, but more and more people are. We've got a couple minutes left. Again, Renee's website is Renlin Consulting. That's RENLIN consulting.com. Go check it out. A lot of stuff here. You got a lot going. What's on your short-term horizon? Just continue on with your schooling and
I'm
working
still
with
in
people?
schooling. I'm a senior, and when I graduate, I'll be doing this full-time. But right now, I'm building clientele in a, you know, kind of a comfortable pace.
And again, people, our listeners that are listening, we got a lot of people that listen throughout the country through through our Listen Live link and through Inception and some other things. Even if you're not here in Salt Lake or in Utah, you can still work with you out of the area. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I can do distance things. I do FaceTime mostly, but I'm open to Skype also.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. Well, it was an honor to have you on the program, and I think we need to get you back again and talk about more deep stuff. Maybe more alien stuff. We'll see. But I think we're all, in general, we're all learning different things.